Today we're going to be having a conversation with Kushal Sogani, GSec, CAIC. So firstly, Kushal, hello, how are you?
Good.
Okay, so before we start off with the questions, could you just give a brief overview of your tenure so far?
Sure. So, as my tenure began, I started by reviewing the minutes of last CAIC meeting as well as the manifesto which I had presented. So, most problems rested with the various clubs. As per Parliament orders, government institutions were only allowed to maintain 4 accounts, but there were at least 50-60 savings accounts of various independent bodies running under IIT's name, and they had to be shut immediately. So, to pursue this, the institute had blocked the accounts of clubs and the clubs were cut from their funding. While this created a lot of nuisances for the clubs, it paved the path for transparency also. It was decided that the entire accounting be shifted to IRD and the clubs be run exactly like a project. There was an existing IRD ahead for CAC clubs. On evaluating the balance sheet, it was a complete mess because there were no records of previous years. And this was because there was less information amongst the students about the entire process. So that is exactly the cost of transparency. It comes with a lot of documentation and people usually ignore to follow it, and that is why there were no records existing. So we had to set everything to zero, and this required constant nagging with the account section, and the administration, the staff and the students had to be brought on the same page. To lead with an example, we led the initiative by running the entire trust under IRD account. This was the first time this was being done, and now I can constantly boast about it because there is every record for even a single rupee out of the various lakhs budget that we allotted. So so now all the festivals would have to follow the same process, and we are proud that we led this as an example. So after this, because this involved a lot of time and it was very time consuming, it took almost 2 to 3 months for the accounts to set up, and last month only the clubs were given access to this account. So the other manifesto points definitely suffered. But next we tried that. So this time the trust website was completely revamped and it was made to a very advanced version wherein there were also login facilities for students so that the database could be maintained for future. So we were trying to archive the website, and also, as I had mentioned in my manifesto, we were trying that all the lectures organized in the institute be held under a channel or be archived so that people could review them afterwards. But this requires a lot of server space, and outsourcing the server space is very expensive. We are trying to get a server space in IIT. Let's see how it goes about. We are requesting that at least 1 terabyte server space be allotted to maintain these activities, and this would also enable us to put up various research done by our PhD and MTech students online, and this would also establish the research community, which I would be talking about later onwards. So once the server space is created, we would have all the means to establish this, but we needed a dedicated team to maintain portals etc. on these websites so that they could be recorded. So for that we have formalized the dev club, and it will be soon be official in the next CAIC meeting. The function of this dev club is to create portals for institutes for any field, like whatever they require. They have also created a Facebook bot which would automatically respond to people's questions, hence cutting out the middleman of humans. So these are the activities which are being taken by the dev club, and they would soon be developing many more portals in the near future. Also, in collaboration with SAC, we are launching the board for technical activities, which would ensure that there is a greater workforce to promote the inter-hostel technical culture, and this would be a management team which would manage all the clubs, the technical clubs. And in collaboration with the AIP team, we have also increased a lot of exchange opportunities by revamping existing MOUs with pending universities, and in the coming years you would see that a lot of exchange opportunities are being increased.
So like you said, you mentioned the inter-hostel technical events, right? You wanted to increase the culture. So like in your manifesto, you had also mentioned about the same, the inter-hostel technical fests or events. So is there any scope of them having a place in the near future, and what exactly are the reasons as to why they haven't actually taken place as of now?
See, the point is that the participation in these events is very minimal. Firstly, to have such sort of an event, for example, let's take Aero Modeling Club. So it is not everybody's hobby to design a remote control aircraft, right? So it is not something like singing which people can pursue daily and come up tomorrow with a performance. So giving knowledge to students, it is not a one day workshop thing. It requires a huge time and people have to be dedicated. So we have seen that the more we organize workshop, etc., people start losing interest, and the interest is not sustained. That is why there is a formation of board for technical activities, which would ensure that there are hostel representatives in every hostel that would promote these activities, and the participation would be grown slowly. It cannot be grown overnight, and mostly the promotion of various club activities are rested by the club. We do not interfere much with the club activities because they are of very different domains and they have to be run independently. For example, EDC performed a lot of activities this year, but their activities are completely different. Their activities cannot be performed on an inter-hostel level. So that is why there is the annual technical festival Tris, where all these clubs put up their events, and so that we can have a general competition for all IIT students as well as non-IIT students. And since that is an yearly activity, people can prepare for year long and can present it. Because let's say robotic events, they are launched 3 to 4 months before TRIS, and people take 3 to 4 months time to develop bots to present in TRIS. That is why these activities are that it is difficult to perform them on an inter-hostel level, because number one, the participation would be minimal, and number two, it takes time for people to prepare for these events.
Okay. So the second question that I would like to ask is about the Inter-IIT exchange program. So as much as I know about the program, it was basically supposed to be launched as a collaboration with IIT Mumbai and Roorkee, and was aimed at sending 2 students per semester to each of the universities for the whole semester, very similar to the foreign exchange program. So could you explain a little about the program, and
Right.
also about how exactly it is going to take place in the future, if it will be?
Sure. So the paperwork had all been completed for this program and the documentation had been done. But there was an issue from both the institutions. They were a little bit hesitant to send the students immediately, and they required a more, let's say, uh, a demo, how things would run up, how the credits would be transferred, and all these things had to be formalized. So I had consulted with Mr. Allen, but since Mr. Allen, as you know, would be heading out on a transfer, so that is why the entire process will now have to go through the new assistant registrar. So that is why the things have come to a delay in this regards. As soon as the new assistant registrar becomes familiar with the proceedings, we would put up the entire initiative in front of him, and we would restart the dummy process, and we would first reevaluate how the credit system would be formulated, and then we would establish contact with both IIT Bombay and IIT Roorkee to start with the process. So within, like, by next year, all these things would be taking place, and maybe we can start the exchange program by next year.
Okay. So the final question for today. So your manifesto actually mentioned about revamping the budget allocation of all the technical clubs, and also the possibility of starting a research community club like you had mentioned before. So could you explain a little about that? And also I would like to ask, since has there any allocation been done so far in the clubs, and how far are you guys in the process of making that community?
Yeah, right. I said the entire funding process has changed, and the entire budget system has been reviewed and is also being reviewed, and a rough budget allocation has been revamped, and the final allocation is still pending with the clubs as to they have to provide if they require any changes. Also, the institute has also put hold on these activities because there is a little doubt about how external sponsorships would play a role, because it involves a lot of taxation issues. Since the entire money would be processed through the IRD account, therefore IIT would be responsible for a single penny. So hence we cannot take things lightly over here, and the entire procedure has to be laid down. So that part the institute is taking care of. Otherwise, the budget has been revamped and the clubs are free to use the money right now. As far as the research community is involved, so we led the initiative in TRIS, like the paper presentation workshop was merely so that research culture could be promoted. But to start that, we first wanted to display all the research work which our students are doing. So, like I mentioned, we are getting the server space for the students so that people can put up their research work online, and the portal will be developed by Dev Club after their formalization. And once that is done, then people will automatically start taking interest in research, and then we can form a research club.
Okay. So, is there a certain time limit in which this could be taking place?
Right. So, let's say within 1 or 2 months we get the server space, and by next semester the portal will be established. So by next to next semester we can start putting up the research work online, and then we can.
Okay. Thank you for answering all the questions. We hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned to BSP and IITD On Air for many more videos. Thank you.